welcome to Worldview Everlasting. Oh yeah, your favorite YouTube addiction. Oh yeah. Yay!
Email.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, we've had a number of times this upcoming now question has been asked over the past couple of years, and I know I've touched on it here and there. Never really done a video directed exclusively to it, partially because you can never really do this entire thing in one video, and then on top of that, it's one of those topics that tends to get, well, a whole lot of hate. You know, there's really only 3 things that I've ever really seen a lot of hate from when I've done videos on them, with the exception of, well, I guess that makes it 4 things. I just thought of a new one. One is baptism. Baptism always brings out hate from Christians who disagree with the Bible's teaching on baptism. Calling out false teachers for teaching falsely. That one also always brings out people who like their false teacher and want to defend them, which again is kind of a unique thing. And usually it's like, don't call out the false teacher. Can't we all just get along? We're Christians. Jesus told us to love each other, which is true. He did say love each other, and how will you know that you love God by keeping his word and stuff like that? So, you know, there's that whole problem. And then there's the 2 more secular realm things. One, if you're going to talk about homosexuality being one way in which a person can commit the sin of adultery, which is included then with other things like cohabitation with one you're not married to, and, I don't know, divorce, you know. If you're going to talk about, well, I guess I should just say the 6th commandment, then you tend to get a little bit of hate. But our culture's a bit hyped up on the hating the homosexual haters, you know, as if that's what we're doing, is hating them by not thinking that what they're doing is healthy for them. Anyway, our culture's all up on that, so that always brings out the hate. And then this last one, which is just the topic that everybody wants to argue about, and usually the last thing they want to do is argue about it from what Scripture actually says. They want to argue about it from every possible postulated idea of man's thoughts and observations and so forth, not from what Scripture says. And that is, how many days did it take to make the world? And is macroevolutionary theory necessarily compatible with the Bible and or true? That's the one we're going to try to take up today, although in brevity, and certainly not trying to undo every possible argument ever made. And contrary to all you out there are going to say, but you're not a scientist, you can't talk about this. Well, I know, of course I'm not a scientist, and I can't talk about it in the narrow. The same way that you as a not a trained theologian shouldn't talk about the Bible, yeah? Yeah, is that what you're saying? I see where you're going. Oh, it's not a two-way street? Ah, yeah. But this is kind of a key thing. I am not a scientist. I have not studied physics at the PhD level. I have not studied biology at the PhD level. I have not studied chemistry at the PhD level, although I do have a high school and basic ed college understanding of the sciences, particularly the science of philosophy, which I have studied at a further level, which tends to be the realm into which most of these debates actually end up going rather quickly. It's usually not about the evidence that we see. In fact, even young Earth creationists who may in fact teach some sort of pseudoscience from time to time, usually they're not debating the evidence that we observe. They're debating the question of what the evidence means. And this moves very quickly into, well, philosophical speculation, especially when we're dealing with times before our own, things that we cannot actually reproduce in a laboratory and so forth. So there's that whole side of things to recognize. And yeah, do I have an answer for every possible observation of matter that we observe? No, I don't. What I do have is a pretty strong and firm knowledge of the way the scriptures work. And, well, that's what I'm going to give you by and large. So if you want to ask the question, why would a Christian say that you cannot be both a macroevolutionary theorist who believes in billions and billions of years of created existence, everything going on exactly as we see it now, only without humans, because humans don't come around until significantly later on that giant timeline, and the Bible's teaching? The reason isn't really Genesis chapter 1. That's not the place you go. Although all theology is contained in Genesis 1 through 3, and you should be able to just get that theology from that, even the theology of who Christ is and what he's going to do. Nonetheless, if you want the very clear, here's your kindergarten level reasoning, you got to go to Romans chapter 5, where in verse 12, St. Paul says something pretty, plain and obvious, and certainly not metaphorical. I mean, the whole thing about Genesis chapter 1 and the argument is these are just metaphors or symbols or something. I mean, I don't think you can make that argument from the text. The text reads like a history all the way through until Joseph is the king of Egypt. I mean, it's all one book and it pretty much reads the same way. But, that aside, if you're going to try to make that argument about this text, that Romans chapter 5 is just a metaphor, you run into some real problems, and it gets to the point where I would have to say then you're not a Christian. you're not a Christian because of where you must go with your logical conclusion that you're applying to one text and then start to have to apply to another, right? So Romans chapter 5 verse 12, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, so death spread to all men. He does add because all sin, but here's the point. Sin, rebellion against God, entered the world through one individual human man, one male, and death entered the world through that male's sinning. And so all die now because of that one male's sinning, which means that you had to have, if you want your billions of years of evolution, this evolution is taking place without death prior to the first human being, Adam, who God would still have had to somehow make out of the earth without death or evolutionary process, because this is the thing that evolution needs. As a theory of creation, evolution requires death, right? I'm okay with the idea of survival of the fittest. You can observe that in nature, no problem. I'm okay with the idea of genes and breeding and so forth, of information that is in our DNA that gets weeded out and so forth. I'm not so sure that we can observe information being put in that is necessarily beneficial, but maybe some scientists will argue with me about that. That's not the point. The point is that death is required for this to happen, and prior to the fall, there was no death. And so if you're going to say, I'm a Christian and I believe in macroevolution in billions of years, well, what do you do with this text that says death came to the world through one man? Oh, it's just speaking metaphorically about how all mankind are sinful. So then when it goes on to say, yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, Adam a type of the one to come, many died through one man's trespass. And then it goes on to say, much more than, according to this type, as the free gift of God by grace in the one man Jesus Christ abounded for many. Is that a metaphor too? So Jesus, death and resurrection as one man saving the world, metaphorical. I mean, we're back where we were like a couple weeks back with the I am statements, right? Are you sure you want to take this argument all the way to its conclusion? Because once you do, then I have to say, I guess you're not a Christian. Because if you think Jesus is just a metaphor for God's love for you, you're not a Christian. Sorry, Christianity is the belief that Jesus as one man died and rose again as the payment for the sins of the world, and you are baptized into, you're put into, you're washed by this truth. You're going to deny that, then you're not a Christian. I'm glad you like Jesus. I'm glad you want to be friends with Jesus. Jesus would kind of like smack you down too. I'm probably being nicer than he would. I mean, go read how he treats those who don't take his word at face value. He's kind of pissy, from time to time, woe to you, away from me, evildoers kind of stuff, yeah? All I'm saying is, this text, Romans chapter 5, insists that death entered the world through man, and death is being taken away from the world through man. Not just mankind as a whole, but through one man in each case. The first, a type who fell. The second, an antitype, a completion who rises, yeah? And then gives this resurrection to all. So once you've believed that, the question suddenly becomes, what is the need that you have to cling to this evolutionary theory which insists at its kind of philosophical level that death is the means by which God created the entire world even up to and before man? Throw into that the mix that you're attempting to read through science and observation a world that existed before a cataclysmic event that changed the world in such a way that plants that before didn't have thorns now do, and animals that before didn't eat animals now do, that people who never died or decayed before now do. You're trying to observe something now and read past beyond this hyper wormhole dimension altering act of God destruction that's been placed on it. I'm gonna sit here as just a philosophical Christian without any of the science and say you're nuts. You're trying to read something that can't be read. You know those flaming angels with the swords he put in front of the garden? That means you can't get back there. You can't even see what happened there. All you see is the result of that cataclysmic fall. And if you're going to come at me with all of this carbon dating and how everything's decayed more than it should have, blah, 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 I'm going to tell you, well, yeah, of course it is. It like broke, And we're observing the result of the broke and trying to read it as if it's been going on like that from the beginning, which pretty clear, if you're a Christian, you have to believe it has not gone on the same since the beginning. Or you're going to say, I don't believe in a fall, the fall, death entering the world through Adam. And then I got to ask you, so why do you believe death leaves the world through Jesus? What's the point? What are you protecting? What are you trying to save? Are you trying to save some of your observations? Now, here's the thing about the creation scientists, and I get it, some of them don't always play by the same rules that they should play by, but what I have seen is that wherever I have a piece of information where one evolutionary scientist is insisting it means this, there are all alternative explanations that can make sense if you just let them have a chance to make sense, and maybe they're not entirely satisfying, but are you telling me that evolutionary answers are always entirely satisfying? You're telling me that the life cycle cycle of the monarch butterfly and its metamorphosis effect, it can be satisfactorily explained by a series of accidental events happening over millions of years and then somehow congealing into one with multiple transitions happening at once so that the creature actually dies and lives. I mean, and you can go watch this movie Metamorphosis. If you are a Christian who believes what I've been saying, you're probably going to be like really affirmed in your questioning of evolutionary theory. If you're the skeptic who refuses, you're going to come back with, oh, this has been disproven. Well, has it now? You're disproving philosophy. You realize that. You can't really disprove philosophy. You can disagree with it, right? What are you disproving? That the monarch butterfly doesn't metamorphose? And how many explanations can we come up with this? Anyway, different topic. Point being that if you want an explanation for the scientific evidence you see, it is possible to come up with more than one that potentially works, especially if you come at it from the belief system that death entered the world through Adam. There are other options. Oh, but the stars. We observe the stars and there is light that would have had to have existed for billions of years to come from that star to the present where we are. Yeah, unless when God created the star, he created the light too. I mean, so you got your trees, right? Here's your trees, and these trees have tree rings. And although we don't have any tree rings going back more than 5,000 years, interestingly enough, let's say you found a tree ring with a billion rings in it, right? And so you're like, oh, look, it has to be a billion years old because there's a billion rings in it. So you're telling me that I have to assume that if God created a tree right now, in this moment, it would have no rings in it because he made it now, and it can't have like billions of rings in it because it is created as if it had been around that long and it actually gone through the normal growth process. You're importing stuff onto what God can and cannot do at that point that I'm just not going to do. So my experience has been that most people who have these arguments against the answers creation science tends to give is because they're importing onto it an entire philosophy that it doesn't have to be imported onto it. Is there junk science out there under the name creation science? Absolutely. But see, don't tell me there's no junk science out there under the name of evolutionary theory. Plenty of junk science. I mean, Lucy, anybody? Hello. You seen that picture of the horse evolution in the textbooks? Hello. I mean, you know what I'm saying. So, and I get it how you're tired of it, and I get it how if you work in an environment where everybody believes this is going to be a real challenge to like not believe this, but don't tell me that every Christian who believes in six-day creation is therefore de facto a junk scientist.
So you've either got to be staggeringly ignorant, which most of them are, or if you're not ignorant, you've got to be insane.
There are plenty of good scientists out there who do believe in six-day creation and just have alternative answers for the data that we see. And don't accuse them of being fake scientists. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but these guys who have PhDs in physics and chemistry and whatnot, and then have a conversion to Christianity and then actually change their worldview from evolution to Christianity, don't tell them they're junk scientists. I mean, that's just rude. You're assuming an awful lot about yourself at that point and your own ability to perceive all things. Maybe there's answers you just haven't thought of and you haven't spent enough time with the right people. Find the answers that you need. And the answers that you need start with Romans chapter 5, not Genesis. Nope. Romans chapter 5. One man death, one man life. And if you don't believe that, then why do you want to be a Christian? And if you do believe that, then why are you defending evolution so much? And by evolution, I just mean this macro theory that is explanation of everything ever, right? I got no problem with survival of the fittest. Duh. Obviously it happens. And when you breed some fruit flies with red and white eyes, sometimes they come out in genomic, can I say that word? Genomic patterns that can be traced, and they skip generations, and the ones the weak die and the strong live. Okay, fine. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking where death come from. And I'm telling you, death didn't come from God. Hear what I'm saying? Yeah, came from us. Last enemy to be destroyed too. Looking forward to that day. Hope that helps a little bit. Maybe not. Hate mail, begin. Come haters, bring it.
Hey haters!
Bring it. Hate. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to ignore it. I will not respond. I am not responding. You can hate with your fake accusations. Go read Romans 5 and happy Easter.
Peter here, your friendly neighborhood ninja edit monkey. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you are looking for more resources on evolution and creationism, Issues Etc. has actually been doing some excellent interviews, a series of interviews right now with Dr. Joel Heck of Concordia University, and you can check out those interviews. We've linked to them right down below in the description if you want to go check that out. We've got links directly to the first 3 interviews that are up. I believe it's going to be a 7-part series. They've done the first 3 parts. The second one in particular, some of you who are looking for more of the scientific answers, goes through the radiometric dating, so you can go check that out, get more information on the dating. The first episode in that series talks more about Jesus in the New Testament and how he talks about creation, all the different Bible verses in the New Testament that refer to creation. So you can check that out and get information on that as well. I've provided an additional link there as well where you can go for future interviews in that same series, as well as some interviews that Dr. Heck has done in the past on this same topic that you might find helpful. helpful. Hopefully you are a part of the Lutheran Ninja Clan. We really appreciate your support. The more of you we have supporting us, the more we can do with this show in terms of expanding it, getting on additional guests, putting more time into making it as excellent as it can be, and we love working on it, and we both want to continue doing that, and your support is what makes that possible. If you're not yet part of the Lutheran Ninja Clan, we encourage you to join. You can click on the link right here, take you directly to the page. To join the Lutheran Ninja Clan, you can join for $5 a month. That's our recommended donation, but there are other options there as well if you have the means. We greatly appreciate those of you who have already joined the Lutheran Ninja Clan and are supporting us. Thank you so much for your gifts. We hope that many more of you are able to join us so that we can continue putting out more awesome content and beginning to do maybe even some higher quality production things in addition to our normal shows. That's all we've got for today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to check out the clickouts that are, wow, this is hard to do. Over there somewhere. All right, over there. Check out the clickouts. Rock on. Can I say that?